our legislators on behalf of the Second Amendment, as a Second Amendment supporter, and as a gun owner. So if you have been scared by the media about what we look like, I want you to take a look around right now. These women are all gun owners, not closet gun owners anymore. All right, let me see where I was. See, I told you. Can't read. Okay, back to the beating. So the antis have money and an organized PR campaign that is winning the hearts and minds of the middle ground, calling us terrorists, baby killers, and worse. We're basically being bullied, in my opinion. I heard a story of an LBGT woman who said it was easier to come out of the closet as a gay person than it was a gun owner. That's where we're at these days. We need to wake up. We have to get engaged and start talking to our friends, our neighbors, our families, our communities about guns, firearms, education. We have to invite them to the range. We need to introduce them to the shooting sports. We need to introduce them to hunting. We need to introduce them, most importantly, to self-defense. And that's from everyone and everything, foreign and domestic. I'm really proud of you girls in this group and what we've accomplished in these short 2 days. Keep engaged at home. Keep engaged locally. Like I said, the community, the family, everything. I know the conversations are exhausting because it's really irrational. Having a rational conversation with an irrational person is difficult. But do not give up. I implore you, do not give up. And the next time that somebody tells you that you do not need a HagCap magazine, you don't need an AR-15. I want you to remember this quote. You'll have to look it up later or write it down now. William Pitt the Younger, necessity is the plea for every human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants, and it is the creed of slaves. Okay, clap now. Okay, good job. I'm really honored to turn this over to a guy who is not only serving now in the Virginia Delegate, but he has served his country as a Green Beret, and he's been to 2 combat tours. But you might know him because of viral videos, because he speaks from the heart about the Second Amendment. So it's my honor to introduce Nick Freitas. I know he's going to be in that house. He might be in that house someday, so get a picture with him before he leaves.
Hey, thank you all very much for being here. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I want to thank you for being here up front is, unfortunately, in this era of identity politics, when I give a pro-Second Amendment speech, I don't pay the same price for it that you do as women. Because I think a lot of women have been taught to believe that there's a special section of issues called women's issues that they're supposed to stick to. And they're not supposed to worry about other issues. And as my wife will tell you, as my mother will tell you, as I will tell you, all women, all issues are women's issues.
Yeah.
To include the right to defend yourself. Now we went through this in the Virginia General Assembly several months ago. And I was hoping for a civil discussion. And I learned very quickly that that's not the way it was going to go. That's not the way a lot of people wanted it to go. They didn't want to have a discussion on how we could make our kids safer. They didn't want to have a discussion on how we could make our schools, our communities safer. They wanted to have a discussion on how they were going to infringe on our Second Amendment rights. And they saw that as an opportunity to use it to achieve that end. And I sat there as colleagues referred to us or compared us to Nazis, compared us to segregationists, because we were standing up for the Second Amendment. And what is the Second Amendment? Because it's been caricatured as if it's nothing more than gun rights, as if it's about hunting or if it's about gun collecting. The Second Amendment, at its heart, at its fundamental level, is about your right to be able to defend yourself. And that is critical. Because I can tell you, after 11 years active duty in the military, the country sent me all over the world to a lot of places that are on nobody's bucket list. And I can tell you right now, I've seen what happens when people buy into this false narrative that they just hand a little bit more of their freedom over to the government will take care and protect them. It doesn't work. It is always sold as this idea to protect the poor and the vulnerable, and the poor and the vulnerable are always the first exploited when they hand over their individual liberty and significantly their right to defend themselves over to the government. And I can't tell you, we had over 40 million people see that speech, and we had people from all over the country contact us, but the ones that really resonated, and in addition to all the people that were just thanking us, were the people that were calling us from Australia, from the UK, from the Philippines, saying, you're absolutely right, don't give them up. Don't buy into it. Because they'll start with one thing. They'll start with the common sense gun control, and the next thing they know, they're coming after your rifles, then they're coming after your pistols, they're coming after your shotguns. Because ultimately, this is a battle about control. Who will have control? And any nation that would deprive you of your ability to defend yourself is a nation that is trying to turn citizens into subjects. We're not subjects in this country.
That's right.
But there's another thing that we have to do as part of this movement. I heard a lot of it today, and I just want to say right off the bat, I really appreciate the young woman that organized her own protest, because one of the most frustrating aspects of listening to the media and politicians manipulate all of these kids to do a walkout. I wasn't offended that they wanted to do a protest. I generally think protesting the government is a good idea. What I was offended by was this whole idea that we were teaching an entire generation of kids that the only way they could affect positive change in their life was to talk to a legislator, was to lobby the government. Well, that works out very conveniently for people like me who are legislators, people like legislators in that building, because it leads you to believe that the only power you have is the power to lobby, that all the real power resides in politicians. I'm here to tell you that as free people, power resides in us as individuals. And one of the most effective things that we could have been telling those students to do was not simply walk out for 17 minutes and protest the government. It was to walk over to that kid in that classroom that feels isolated, that is going home into an environment where they feel abused, where they feel neglected. Because we all understand this. We don't want to just save the potential victims. We want to save that person too by making sure that they never get to a point where they perpetrate such an act of violence.
Yeah.
This is about saving everyone. But why do we do this? I understand that on the other side of this argument, when they hear gun control, they think safer streets, they think safer schools, they think safer communities. And because they think that, because they honestly believe that, they view us with confusion and contempt that we oppose them. It's time for them to hear our perspective. Because when we see the Second Amendment, we don't see our right to hunt. We don't see our right to collect. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of use cases every year in this country where a weaker person defends themselves from an attacker, prevents a theft, prevents a robbery, prevents a burglary, prevents a rape, prevents a murder, prevents a molestation. And so when they say gun control, they see a safer community. When we hear gun control, we see hundreds of thousands of additional victims that were deprived of their ability to defend themselves against a stronger attacker. It is on their behalf that we fight this.
Yeah. Yes.
So don't ever think that because the other side is so well funded, or because the other side has the media on their side, or they have Hollywood on their side, don't ever think that what you're doing right now doesn't make a difference. I've seen this all over the world. A few armed people with the truth can overcome a much larger, much well-financed, and much more bigger opponent. Yeah. So don't ever stop what you're doing. Don't ever fight for it, because I'll tell you what. The right that we have, that fundamental right to defend ourselves, that was bought at a price. Mm-hmm. And we all have an obligation to the people that came before us. We have an obligation to the people that are coming after us. I have an obligation to friends of mine that didn't come home to make sure that their kids grow up in a republic worthy of their sacrifice, and that they will never be deprived by their government of the right to be able to defend themselves or their families or their communities. Thank you very much for being here, and continue to
Look at that. So we'll give him another round of applause.